Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're focused on politics with the general election coming up on November 4th. One of the contested local races this year is the district attorney of the Cape and Islands. Michael O'Keefe has held the position since 2002. Rick Barry, a local attorney, is hoping to unseat him. Rick Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've been on the Cape for many years. Give the listeners some of your background, if you could.
Well, I initially came to the Cape in 1990 after I graduated New England School of Law. I was hired by former district attorney Philip Rollins, and I moved down here in 1990 and had a great time practicing law in the DA's office. Unfortunately, during that time period, my father contracted lung cancer and ultimately passed away. And when he passed away, I decided to go back to Quincy, where I was originally from, and help my mother out.
And then you then went into law practice, obviously, here on the Cape and Islands. Is that what you've been doing?
I started my own law practice, and I've been down here on the Cape. I have an office over on the corner of Route 28 and Route 130 in Cotuit. I've been there for, I don't even know, probably 15 years. And primarily just practice criminal law.
And you've been on other boards and committees, I know, in town. Let's maybe fill us in on some of that work.
Sure. When I first got down here, I started out on the Civic Association in Cotuit. I was elected president of the Cotuit Civic Association for 3 years back in the 90s. And then after that, I went on to run for town council, representing Precinct 7, which is primarily Cotuit and a portion of Marston's Mills. I served on the town council for 12 years. And then after that, or actually while I was still a town councilor, I ran for the Prudential Committee in Cotuit and was the chairman of that board for, I believe, 3 years.
And now, why did you decide to run for district attorney?
Well, primarily two reasons, Laura. The first one is, as everybody knows, there's a drug epidemic on the Cape and Islands. And I don't feel that my opponent has done enough to deal with that. And I'll give you a perfect example. Back in 2009, there was a case, Melendez-Diaz versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the outcome of that case essentially required chemists who test drugs in drug cases to come into court and testify. On the Cape and Islands and in all the other jurisdictions, about 98% of all the drug cases are handled in the district court. Here on the Cape and Islands, chemists do not come to testify, and I find that inexcusable. There was an issue with the drug lab up in Boston at the Hinton Drug Lab, but nowadays cases are regularly getting dismissed because the district attorney's office can't convict people in the district courts because chemists won't come to testify. That's one of my reasons. The other reason was essentially I'm in court every day, either the Superior Court or Barnstable Court. And I read the papers, and I'm involved in politics. And quite frankly, I think the district attorney's unprofessional conduct and sometimes even borderline criminal conduct make him vulnerable. If you take a look way back when, in the early 2000s, he was the lead prosecutor in the Christopher Worthington case. And he was removed from that because he made disparaging remarks about the murder victim, things that we can't even talk about here on the radio. Imagine being the father or mother of a murder victim and hear the person who is prosecuting your child's case say the things that he said. That's despicable. There's also been other issues with not giving back DNA in that case and a gentleman named Keith Amato was forced to retain the American Civil Liberties Union to sue the DA's office, the state police crime lab. There was another case where he was wrapped up in a gambling scandal with some gentleman named Adam Hart and Timothy Reardon. It was a federal case. They pled guilty to conspiring with an elected official in the district attorney's office. Essentially, it was alleged that Mr. O'Keefe tipped these gentlemen off that the state police were investigating their gambling ring. Further incident was when he had a gun stolen from his house. And I believe it was Jim Kinsella, asked him whether or not he was, if he was properly licensed to carry a gun. And he said at that point he wouldn't comment on an pending investigation. Jim, who's a reporter, took it one step further, went to Sandwich Police Chief Mike Miller, and asked him whether O'Keefe was licensed. And he responded, I don't know if he was licensed before, but he is now. And then, just recently, this happened after I decided to run, but the debacle with Joe Vuado over at Joe's Lobster Mart is a situation where you have the district attorney who is actually prosecuting a guy for receiving stolen shellfish and, more importantly, lying to the police. And after he pled guilty and was fined $6,200 with no money for the victims in the case, O'Keefe wrote a letter to the Department of Public Health when Vuado was notified that they were going to suspend his license or potentially suspend or revoke his license. So those are not the attributes. Mr. O'Keefe has been out there. He's been saying that he is a consummate professional. These are just examples of why he's not, why he should not be reelected.
Now, what do you think are the main skills you need to be a district attorney and make your case that you have those skills?
Well, I have been an assistant district attorney, and I've been a criminal defense attorney. So essentially every day that I go to court, I am up against an assistant district attorney, and I've been very successful at it. So I know how to analyze a case from a defense perspective, how to pick it apart, and how to win the case. If I'm district attorney, I can use those skills that I have to fill those voids to make sure that doesn't happen. So you have to be a good trial attorney.
Now, besides having that law experience, running the district attorney's office also requires administrative skills because there's a big budget and there's a staff. What is your background in that area?
Well, I was on the town council in Barnstable. I was the liaison to the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee. The district attorney's office is a whole lot easier as far as a budget goes to deal with than a municipal budget. There's essentially no capital projects or anything like that. The vast majority of the budget in the district attorney's office is salaries and rent and taking care of the machinery that's there.
Now, you list some cases, some different criticisms of the current district attorney. What would you specifically do differently if you were district attorney?
Well, as far as if I were prosecuting a murder case, I surely wouldn't be making disparaging sexual remarks about a dead person. I find that despicable. I wouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't be tipping off people that they were being investigated. Essentially, it's been reported that these folks, Mr. Hart and Mr. Reardon, were friends of O'Keefe, and at some point he found out that there was an investigation going on into their gambling ring over in Sassuat, and he tipped them off. That's ridiculous. District attorney should never, I repeat, never be engaged in that type of conduct. I would never do that. As far as guns go, I'm licensed to carry a gun. Wouldn't carry one if I didn't have a gun. And that's an interesting case in and of itself. We've never had an answer as to whether or not he was properly licensed. And I guarantee you, if there's no one investigating the district attorney, and that's a problem.
You've criticized Mr. O'Keefe for allowing people who have been convicted on crimes having to do with the elderly.
Take, for example, there was an individual named Mark Higgins who was recently charged. He's been bilking the elderly out of money for a substantial period of time. I believe when the Cape Cod Times wrote an article on it, I believe it was Chief Fredrickson from Yarmouth who came out and said that this guy has been bilking the elderly for a long time. That is something that Mark Higgins should have been indicted a long time ago, and he should have been put in state prison. It's just been a repeated pattern of him coming in with these false home repair schemes and taking money from the elderly.
But isn't somewhat there's a function of the courts in terms of what happens to the person after they end up in court and the laws about incarceration?
Sure. Well, as you know, Laura, there are two courts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, two trial courts. One is the district court and one is the superior court. And the district attorney's office makes the decision as to what cases stay in the district court, which is essentially up to 2.5 years in the county jail, or who gets indicted by process of arraignment or through a probable cause hearing, and they go into the superior court where people go to state prison. And that's what should have happened with him a long, long time ago.
Taking on a sitting district attorney who's been in the position since 2002, prior to that in the office for many years, a daunting task. What made you decide to take this on? You've mentioned a number of different circumstances, specific issues, but talk to us about why you decided to take this on.
As a criminal defense attorney, Laura, I sit down and I talk and I interview and spend hours with these kids that have been addicted to drugs. And it's a very, very sad, sad story. And I don't feel that my opponent has done enough. That example of the chemist not coming into court.
And again, specifically, what would you do on that? I know you've put out some press releases talking about bringing a drug lab down here to the Cape, and if that's one of your ideas, how would that come about? How would that be paid for?
Well, it's interesting. I spoke with George Hoyfelter, who is head of the county health department recently, and he had spoken to the chief lab operator. I forget what his name is, but in any event, they were interested in the proposal, and they thought that it would cost approximately $500,000 to get that lab up and running. That was just a kind of an abstract figure that they came to. It's a question of sitting down with the county commissioners and seeing what's there for money. There's also, when people are convicted of, say, a possessory crime with a narcotic, they're required to pay a drug analyzation fee. So the money could come out of that. There's also forfeiture funds, drug money, cars, houses, so on and so forth, is taken, and it's split 50-50 between the DA's office and also the local police department where the alleged crime occurred. So there's money there for that. Ironically enough, I've been trying to find out how that money has been spent by my opponent, which as of last week, I've been trying to get that information since July, going through the House Ways and Means for both the Senate and the House, and have been unable to. I filed a Freedom of Information request from the DA's office last week asking, where are you spending this money? To date, I haven't got a response back.
Now, in the last minute or so, anything else in particular you'd like to say to voters?
Well, I'm a family guy. I've got 2 kids. I've coached hockey. I'm deeply involved in my community. I live in a village. I care about people. I care about children primarily. And I really think that the Cape needs to be a safer place than it is right now. And I'd ask you to ask yourself, is the Cape as safe as it was in 2002? And I would ask people, furthermore, to take a look at my website, which is richardbarry.org, and I would respectfully request your vote on November 4th.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. Rick, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Laura. It was great seeing you again.
I've been talking to Rick Barry, who is running to unseat Cape and Islands District Attorney Michael O'Keefe in the November 4th election. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.